Borneo is a word and a place that has been in my conscience since I was a young boy, the result of my father's work in Malaysia around the time of statehood. Since then, Borneo has been a fixture over much of my adult life as well. As with most places, Borneo can't really be described, only experienced. The sights and sounds and sensations, the exoticness of the place and its people. My expanding consciousness of the world, the challenges we face as a species and as a member of the biosphere, came during my grad school days at San Francisco State in the mid-90s. It was around this time that I stumbled on a flyer for the Berkeley Borneo Big Home Project, the precursor to the Borneo Project. I soon met founder Joe Lamb and some of his dedicated friends and supporters. In due course, I would embark on a solo venture to Borneo in 1994, to the Malaysian states of Sarawak and Sabah, and to West Kalimantan in Indonesia. Subsequent trips would reinforce my connection and sense of obligation to the land and people of this great Southeast Asian island. Over the years, the Borneo Project has worked to preserve the island's tropical rainforests and its indigenous peoples. This is in spite of continued deforestation and the penetration of foreign powers, most notably Japan and increasingly China. Hydropower dams, plantation agriculture, logging, both legal and illegal, and the insidious oil palm plantations have put crushing stress on the forests, rivers, and wildlife, along with the people whose very existence depends on the health of the forest. Over time, there have been many setbacks and no small number of victories, both tangible and intangible. Then, on the day after Thanksgiving in 2018, I pulled up a New York Times article about Indonesia and oil palm. The first paragraph was a gut punch, and the next few brought a creeping sense of heartbreak and bewilderment. After decades of steady deforestation and land conversion, laws passed in the United States in 2007 led to unprecedented destruction to the ecological and ethnological character of the world's third largest island. Human greed, ignorance, carelessness, willful disregard for risks, failure to consider unintended consequences, provincialness, and a sense of American exceptionalism has produced an unspeakable tragedy. The latest blow began amid growing concern over U.S. energy independence and the role of carbon in climate change. The result was a series of laws creating a requirement for ethanol, a plant-based fuel that reduces auto emissions. U.S. corn producers were beneficiaries but could not meet the demand, creating the need to find a high-energy source from offshore. Europe followed a similar course of action. The best source of ethanol, under the dubious rationale of the free market, was palm oil from Malaysia and Indonesia in general, and Borneo in particular. Multinational Singapore-based Wilmar Corporation became a dominant player in expanding plantations and reaping financial benefits. One is reminded of the hit movie Crazy Rich Asians and the lavish lifestyle of its characters based in Singapore. The most cost-effective approach was simply to bulldoze and burn sections of rainforests, most of which is home to Dayak and other indigenous communities. In some cases, the village headman agreed to leasing the land to the companies, but just as often there is no such agreement in spite of violating state and federal laws. By 2015, fires were a preferred method of clearing and prepping the land for a monoculture of palm oil. That year, unseasonably dry weather contributed to igniting one of the world's largest stores of carbon-rich peat, which the British Isles had used for generations for energy and heat. Soon, southern Borneo was shrouded in a black-gray cloud of choking peat smoke. Hundreds of miles away in Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, and Singapore, the air was virtually unbreathable. NASA satellites recorded the plumes rising high into the stratosphere and circulating eastward across the Pacific by upper atmospheric winds. This continued for months as news outlets gave decreasing coverage. Times reporter Abram Lustgarten describes a moonscape of smoldering stumps, an utter wasteland. Coming to a vista, he reported the same scene as far as the eye could see. The ancient cord of coexistence had been reduced to a literal skeleton of its former self. As I read this, my mind flashed back to scaling waterfalls, plying rivers and tributaries, sliding over slick red mud on the forest floor, and countless remarkable wildlife encounters, from the smallest critters to the man of the forest, the mighty red ape, the majestic and mystical orangutan. Of drinking borak, talking, singing, and dancing, and simply being in the longhouse among our native friends. How should I feel? Depression, sadness, hopelessness, anger, contempt, grief? What about hope, resolve, determination? Summoning the spirit of Gandhi, of Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King, Jesus and Muhammad, of Pete Seeger and Huey Newton. I look to the horizon knowing, if not now, when, if not by me, by whom, if not here, where. We must summon the resources at hand, deploy our talents, maintain hope, and be rejuvenated by loved ones and friends, expanding and encouraging our personal networks and spheres of influence. Respectfully, we must speak the truth, walk the talk, share the bounty, humbly listening, learning, and practicing. We must tread lightly, live locally, but engage globally and make choices consciously. The planet depends on us. In 2016, I traveled to Sabah, Bali, and Sulawesi. I did not see direct signs of the recent destruction and impoverishment of the lowland rainforest that is considered the world's oldest. As I've traveled to various corners of the globe, I've become increasingly conscious of my carbon footprint and its implications. But I've taken a degree of solace in the hope that my efforts are somehow increasing awareness, concern, and knowledge. Borneo is home to an ancient web of life.
Second recording.
And a wise and interdependent indigenous population. May we learn moderation, gain insight, and resolve to take action to protect, preserve, and restore these vital places. In doing so, we must employ all of our energies, talents, connections, resources, and determination. Utan banyak, terima kasih banyak.
It's a YouTube thing. I just did a bunch of photos. But yeah, I'll share it with you when see how it comes out. I'll let this fade out. It's gonna take 30 seconds.
I really want us to discuss doing a trip to Borneo and having part of it be an option to climb that mountain.
Yeah, that's one of the. I can't remember where that picture came from. If that was one of my dad's pictures from the way back in the day.
Can you find it from the other side? That looks like a different thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think you might be right. I think that might be like the north aspect. You know, like as you go to Porum. What's the name of that? Pouring, you head kind of, up the flank and kind of on the south aspect of the mountain.
Yeah, we went to Pouring Hot Springs.
Okay, here we go. So.